delighted today to have a very special guest, the COO of HOA America, Larry Lynn. And welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Oh, man, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure for me. I'm delighted to have you on the show. Like I start every episode the same way, which is like having my guests introduce themselves. And then people always ask why. And I always say because I've botched it so many times that that I'm like, you know what, let them speak for themselves and we'll dive off from there. So Larry, I guess like what I'd ask you is like, if you want to tell the audience like who you are, what you do and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So my name's Larry Lennon. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Hooters of America. We're the franchisor of Hooters. We have 200 of our own units here domestically, another 100 we franchise here in the States, and then 70 that we franchise on 5 continents around the world. 27 years, this year will be 27 years I've been with the brand. They tried to recruit me at one point, and I was like, I don't know if I want that responsibility. I like doing what I was doing, and then I gave my resume in and thought I'd get some experience, and then I'd go and get a real job someday. And that turned into the real job I have today, through the corporate structure, up to director of ops, then came into the office, started a department of ops services, then went into, they asked me to go in the franchise side, and then I had franchise and corporate. And then when my boss, the COO, got promoted to CEO, a few months later, he came to me and said, "Hey, what do you think about being the COO?" And I said, "Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Let's do it." So I learned a lot from him. He's been in the company for 35 years. We can talk about the longevity of some of our people later, but that's my story and how I've been here. And one thing led to another. Our motto is Hooters makes you happy, and it continues to make me happy. And when people ask why I'm here this long, and that's the reason. Have fun with what I'm doing. It's a great brand, 100% unaided brand awareness, and it keeps me happy. So it's afforded me a great life, and I'm still here being happy day in and day out. Every job has its downsides, but our good sides outweigh the downsides well more than anything else. So it's kind of the short version of how I've been here for 27 years, from coming just to get some experience.
And you said something there that I think is pretty cool, is that like 100% unaided brand awareness. Like basically, if I'm understanding that correctly, it's like anybody you ask, do they know what Hooters is? They say, yes, I know exactly what that means.
Exactly. So, it's like Apple, Coke, even worldwide as we go places, we go to one of our Japan and we'll say Hooters and they're like, oh yeah. And they know what it is. It's iconic. Just last week you saw that I don't know if you did, but you saw there was a skit on Saturday Night Live with Sydney Sweeney.
I think the whole world, I think, saw that.
Yeah. And you've probably seen, we've been in a number of Adam Sandler movies where, in most other brands have to ask for that, or they pay for placement, where people come to us, hey, we'd like to use this, or can we rent out your space, or we can do that. So, we're a part of the fabric 40 years later, part of the fabric of America, and not to the Hooters girls are not too dissimilar to the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, right?
Yeah.
You don't notice it, but uniforms have changed a little bit over time to get more modern, but they're still iconic. The blue and white from them, the orange and white from us, and people automatically identify and they have a visceral reaction to it, to what it is. And, oh yeah, hey, they sponsored my little league team, or, oh yeah, I went there at my birthday or my 21st or after this. People always have a story of how they've connected to our brand. And that's what's so exciting about it too. And it spans every demographic, it spans each gender. People have a story about what Hooters meant to them in their life, especially our employees, and how we help empower them to get to their next stages of their lives.
Totally. I mean, a funny story, you just triggered something in my brain. One of my best friends from school, his mother was from Corpus Christi, Texas, and they would go every year. Fun fact, his middle name is Liberty because he was born on July 4th, which I think is a fun fact. But I remember I was in a boarding school and he came back and he had the Hooters t-shirt, but it was like Corpus Christi, Texas. And it was a bunch of new things for me. I'd never heard of Hooters and I'd never heard of Corpus Christi in my life. And he had this t-shirt and he wore it. And I was like, that's the most badass t-shirt I've ever seen in my entire life. I was like, if only that was in Ireland. If only that was in Ireland at the time.
We're working on that. We're working on getting over there to Ireland.
Well, that'll be awesome. I mean, I'll be there for the wings,
Sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like amazing. Like you said, like, I mean, I think the 100% like unaided brand awareness is like a testament to the longevity of the brand, and it's a testament to like the quality of the experience and the guest experience that people have had. And I mean, you've done it for 40 years now. And we were just saying like offline, like the last 4 years feel like 40 years as well, for everybody in hospitality. And so like, I'm curious, like how you guys have like evolved, because obviously, like you said, like the uniforms have kind of evolved with the times as well. And so like lots of what's happening, like the brand itself has evolved and the actual like guest experience is involved, like the whole thing. Like how have you guys like adapted to that change over time?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we'll start with the building, right? We had a wood beach shack, and
Yeah.
I'll tell you, at one point, we were so new, and everybody wanted to get to us, and we had no competition in the space at all. That I always tease that we could have put a Hooters in a toxic waste dump, and people would be lining up out the door to get to it. And early on, we took advantage of that. That we got into second gen properties and properties that maybe others wouldn't take because we're a destination, and people came for that. Now, sometimes you become so successful, and then you've got imitators that come out there, or others, and then even the Applebee's. Like we are sports adjacent for the longest time. Like
Yeah.
obviously we complement sports, but that's not our main thing. Because in a sports bar, when sports aren't on, there's usually generally not people in the restaurant. But for us,
Yeah.
we still have people in the restaurant during lunch, dinner, and sports is the complement. So that's grown over the years. Where I know our local store here had 3 or 4 TVs. Now we probably have 15. But
Yeah.
other even non even the fast casuals and the regular bar and grill restaurants have added TVs and things. So you have to be competitive. Then we've had some direct competitors come in trying to be in our space. So we've upgraded those experiences with the restaurant. And then up until 2008, we only had beer and wine. So we weren't a fully liquor bar. And
Yeah.
sometimes there was a veto vote, like somebody that didn't drink beer or wine wouldn't come in. So imagine taking at that time probably maybe 100 stores that weren't built to have liquor and
Yep.
change them. So that was a seismic shift in what we did. And then we had that. And then we went ahead and we've changed the menu. We had a smaller menu to begin with, and then we started expanding things that were down the fairway for Hooters, and maybe a little off to see limited time offer menus, which would work. And our buffalo shrimp came out of that. We didn't have that. Now it's a staple. Fried pickles. I mean, I'm from upstate New York, and I'm down here in the South, and hear fried pickles. I'm like, nobody's going to buy that. It's our best selling appetizer out there, and I love it today.
Yeah. I
So
love it too.
yeah, so we had things like that from the menu to continue to evolve without going too far from our core.
Yeah.
We've gone from 6 sauces to 20 sauces, and we're finding that balance. And then at the bar, besides liquor, now we're looking at a little more upscale. People are liking the bourbons, the tequilas, the better glass. I was just out in our break room with some folks looking at the new big ice cubes that you drop down, like looks like the Death Star, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Round one to make a better experience. And then part of that, the buildings have evolved. We still have some of our original ones that people feel like they're part of Hooters. Like
Yeah.
you'll hear our regulars say, "This is my Hooters. What are you doing?" That they feel that communal
Yeah.
family. So some of them are the same, but then we also have newer. We add some pieces in. And then for the girls, as the girls have evolved and society's evolved, we're all about empowerment. We want to
Yeah.
empower our girls to feel comfortable in their skin. And like I said, with the Cowboys cheerleaders, it changed a little. Our orange and white are orange and white, but the fabric's different, the cut's different. And then we added not just the tank, we added in a long sleeve shirt, we added in
Yeah.
a cap sleeve shirt. We have a jersey that they wear that they can complement to get game days for whatever games those may be.
Yeah.
And then we also evolved with originally there was no make or it was no excuse me no jewelry, no tattoos, no anything. But then we sat there thinking about it, like as people evolve, that is part of the lexicon of our society now, right?
Yeah.
We have people like that, and it's not a distraction. Nobody goes, "Oh, she's got a tattoo," or "Oh, she's got this certain color earring," or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
So, and again, it was about empowerment of our staff to be themselves and feel comfortable in their environment. So, and even the music, like we used to be a 50s, 60s, 70s, and now we've evolved with the music to be more upbeat, newer, have
Yeah.
that. Because with us, it's an experience. When you're in the restaurant, it's not going to be dull. We have the girls at the table. We have managers out on the floor. Everybody's a part of that community experience for us. So that's how we continue to evolve and
Yeah.
stay relevant with today.
Do you know what's interesting you just said there, which kind of triggered a thought in my mind, is like I heard a phrase recently from somebody and they called it vibe dining, where like you're going to Hooters for like the vibe. So
Yep.
like you're going for the food, you're going for the drinks, you're going for like the people that are there, you're going for the vibe. And like we're just talking about adapting to change over the last few years, and I kind of made that like the last 4 years feel like the last 40 years. And it's like how, like with online, for example, third party, digital has kind of really re-upped that and kind of put a lot of pressure, like a lot of downward pressure on brands, in the sense that like if I go on Uber Eats and I say I want wings, it'll bring up everyone who sells wings in a sort of order. So like the brand is like removed from sort of the equation, if that makes sense, and the vibe of the whole experience. Like, what's your take on that? And like, how are like say like Hooters and HOA like adapting to that?
Well, great question. We actually were an early adopter to that, and to the chagrin of some of our franchise partners, because originally they're like, "Why are we asking people not to come into the restaurant? There's
Yeah,
no way I would do that." And it's not a binary choice. There are people sitting there. We all do it now, but back then we didn't think we would. We're not saying, "Hey, I'm either going to get dressed and drive in and get it, or I'll get it delivered." They've already decided they're sitting on their couch and they're getting food delivered to them. So we took advantage of that early. We were early adopters of it, and we also didn't limit ourselves. A lot of people like, hey, the best rate, I'm going to go with this provider, and that's
yeah,
it. We went with all of them. Like we had some stores that had 6 or 7 tablets on the wall. It's
yeah,
no different if you're a Fox News, CNN, NBC. You're not switching from where you are. So if we're not, there's valuable space on your phone or in your computer. So if you're a DoorDash person and we're not on DoorDash, then we're not in the consideration set.
yeah,
So that was hard early on, all those different things, then entering back. But as it grew, technology, now they all go directly into our system. It's great, it's easy. And then we were actually virtual brands is something else that came up. They
yeah,
came to us early on as because we were early adopters and said, hey, there's not a lot of burgers in this area. What if you did a virtual? And I'll tell you, I thought it was crazy. Why would we do a virtual of our own brand? Why wouldn't people? But it all goes on SEO, search option
yeah,
optimization. We weren't coming up for burgers, we were coming up for wings. So we started Hootie's Burger Bar,
yeah,
and automatic, and it came out in the same bag. It came out from us. We said it powered by Hooters, so nobody thought we were baiting and switching, and
yeah,
it did well. So then we extended that into Hootie's Bait and Tackle, which is our seafood and fish,
yeah,
and then we put it into Hootie's Chicken Tenders, which was a younger generation big.
yeah,
And then we evolved that into Chase's Chicken Tenders, and Chase Elliott's currently our NASCAR driver of the number 9.
yeah, yeah,
I can tell you that because we were early in the game and because we had that, when COVID hit, we switched quickly. We
yeah,
we couldn't be open for the public, but we had a manager, we had a Hooters girl, we had cooks, and we were doing to go out the door. Didn't skip a beat.
that's
Where
amazing.
many other brands, especially back then, because you still had to have the tablets, and
Yeah,
many of the companies do it. There wasn't enough tablets to go to many of these other brands that were now late to the party trying to get in. So that single-handedly allowed us to, go through that rough patch and get to the other side because people
yeah.
can still come in and get our great food.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, I was leaning towards that. Like what I've heard from lots of other executives like yourself on this pod is that like some of the brands were like late adopters, some early adopters to technology. Like some would actively choose to be like second in the race, like let other people figure out all the problems and then we bring it on. But I think like what COVID in particular like accelerated the sort of technology learning phase for everybody. Like we said, 40 years and 4 years. I mean, none of it. I mean, if like say these sort of like third parties didn't exist, would the or like are they were like COVID didn't happen? It's probably is it likely or like you wouldn't have done it in such a compressed time period? Basically, is what I'm getting at.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we were in early,
Yeah,
so we would have been in either way. I like to get in there and
yeah,
either fail fast or fail forward and learn. And the challenge is on the backside. So when we got people being able to come back into the restaurant, we had so many people used to our product and getting it delivered. And then for a little while, we had almost like a competition. So I've got, I remember distinctively one of my restaurants turning away a 10 top coming in because there was too many things coming in on the kitchen printer from outside. Now for us, fundamentally, butts and seats is what we want because we can
yeah,
give them the experience and we can give them everything they have. So that was the challenge of trying to, and we still have that challenge today in some stores of trying to manage that because we are great food, which was
yeah,
proven by the epidemic or the pandemic because we still thrived. And if it wasn't the food that people was good and people were coming in for, we would have had trouble during that time. So it proved that we had a viable product outside of the entertainment and the girls and the experience in our store. But that's what we want people to come into and experience that. And that's where we're trying to balance it at this point on in-store versus out of store. And I tell you, I've been ad nauseum with all my tech partners, like, how do I fill the bucket with the people in the store and then go to the next level of, I want to fill up my bucket with people in seats having the experience, and then supplement that with the leftover capacity in the kitchen to deliver to the people that want it at home as well.
Yeah, which is interesting. I mean, like, one of the things, like, I definitely hear from a lot of people as well is that, like, you know, like, everyone's forced into online. I mean, obviously you guys were like early adopters, and I'm curious your take on this now, because the majority of people, I feel like, were kind of not kicking and screaming, but like, it was like an oh no kind of moment. Like, we need to like really pivot our business model to online. And what that led to was a sort of like decline in quality, because like certain foods just like, I'd say, especially in 2019, 2020, like, we're not really ready for like delivery prime time, so to speak. And so I've spoken to a lot of people that say like their big focus now is like really improving sort of the in-store experience again, because that like third party is kind of let down like how the food should properly be consumed. Like, I think a lot about, like, say you order a sandwich, like a hot sandwich, and it takes half an hour to get to you. Like, before, you would walk into the deli or you would go to the sandwich place and you'd eat it probably there, or you eat it on the side of it, like on this, you know, you would eat it probably pretty much immediately. But now it arrives, and that, you know, can make it kind of soggy, or that can kind of make it kind of cold. And so like nailing that type of new age packaging, because you're just reacting to the markets. You're like, I'll take any packaging I can get, to like, now it's like, okay, well, how do we solve that? And if that's what people expect, well, how can we then elevate what's in the store itself, like in the restaurant, so that like when they come in, it's like, wow, like fumes coming out of the food, or like, you know, the aromas that kind of come with it. I'm curious if you guys had like, you were ahead of that, so you were able to kind of solve that sort of delivery packaging as well.
Yeah, I don't know if we've solved it. I don't know if anybody's actually solved it. The good thing is that we're all on the same playing field. You said it perfectly. Nothing beats the in-store experience. Get away from anything else, just the food itself. Nothing beats hot food brought to the table in a timely manner. Everything else doesn't travel as well. But since the pandemic and since we had to do that, I think everybody's used to that, and they are okay if they love the food and they've had it in the restaurant and they know what that quality is. They understand when it comes to the house, it's not going to be the same because of all the aforementioned things you just happened. And, you know, some people will say, well, hey, I really want my wings, and oh, it's going to be 40 minutes. I'll wait 40 minutes because I love the taste of those wings. And, you know, they can reheat them, and we have reheating instructions. And, you know, we've played with every type of packaging possible, vented, non-vented, all that. And, you know, really, and we also get stuff from other brands because we want to see who does, if they're doing something that we can do as well. I mean, everybody does that in the industry, and it all comes out the same. It's all not as good of a product as in store, but you buy it at home because you've had such a good experience in the store and you love the food.
Yeah, no, I get that. And that totally makes sense. It's just like, I think it's such a fascinating challenge for brands to try and overcome, because like, you have to play you have to be on the field to like score the points. You know what I mean?
Well, and you also have to know what, we also know I use it all the time. No is a perfectly acceptable answer. And there are some things that we either don't deliver because they're going to come out poorly, or we've changed our delivery of them. You know, our buffalo shrimp, we don't put the sauce on them. We put it on the side, because that sauce, when it gets on there, and if it's going to sit the whole way, is going to make them a little soggy and colder quicker than them keeping their natural heat with our proprietary breading on there. And then people can shake them at home or put the sauce on or dip them like that. So we've made adjustments to the model as they go out of the store to try to mitigate any of the downside of that delivery as well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I guess, you know, evolving from like, say, the 40 years of change, you know, that we've just been talking about as well, which is like very much on the operation and the technology side. I mean, like, you know, Hooters is famous for its people, you know, and you guys are a famous, like, almost like family brand. Like, one of my colleagues, Ruhan, who's up in Toronto, loves the Hooters in Toronto, and like, it's like, oh, it's an amazing family restaurant. And I'm like, it is. So it's like, what else could it be? You know, and I'm like laughing because I'm like, you know, it's famous that the first thing he leaned into was like people and family. You know what I mean? Like, as in like, and that's what you guys are really, really famous for. Like, people like service with a smile. I would say, like, I'm sure you guys didn't coin the phrase, but I'm sure that is the most applicable phrase for you guys that possibly exists. And so, like, you know, when you think about like sort of like investing in people and investing in the culture, you talk about 100% unaided brand awareness for the brand itself. But like, I'm sure there's a metric for measuring your sort of employee happiness that's probably, and measuring your culture, that's also like probably as close to 100% as you possibly can get.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the thing about us is I say it all the time, we're a little bit quirky compared to other restaurants. And I say that it's not a bad
Yeah.
way. We're something a little bit different. And when I was in the stores hiring people as the general manager, I would tell my folks, because I had experience being a restaurant server, bartender at other places of casual restaurant. And I
Yeah.
told them, whereas in those places, it's kind of, they don't want you to be seen out front. It's stop, drop, and run, go to the back, you talk in the alley, and then, the customer is sitting there looking for you. For us, we encourage our girls. They need to be at the table talking. If you have on a Liverpool shirt and
Yeah.
they're an Everton fan, then
Yeah.
they're going to talk some smack to you about Liverpool and
Yeah.
Everton.
Yeah.
Talk about the Cowboys versus somebody else, and they're engaged. We want them to be part of that experience, and the same with managers. I mean, although and when I was a manager, I was out of the table. That can make or break it. So, and then we invest in the training. I think as we talked about it, I told you my story.
Yeah.
We have our CEO started out as a dishwasher over 30 years ago, and now he's the CEO. Cheryl Kish, our chief people officer, started out as a Hooters girl, became the first female vice president of her company, left and went on to her own consulting. And then Sal, our CEO, and I suckered her coming back in and work for us again because she bleeds orange and loves the brand. And then on top of that, 40% of our in-store management came from the Hooters girl ranks. And then there's another percentage that came from the kitchen. And so we promote from within. And then we have people here in the office in marketing, accounting, other places that have grown up with the brand. And we have a lot of tenure. So it's not, we have cooks at 30 years. We have, employees all between 20, at 27 years with like my vice president of company store ops started out as a cook in the kitchen, and he's been here 30 years, director of ops 30 years. So we give that, we believe from promoting within. They know the brand well, and we like to empower our people to move up. And it's not just moving up with us. We want to give people the life skills that if they stay with us and choose to be with us, awesome. But I'm just as happy when I can help somebody get the skills they need to go on and do whatever it is that is their life stream. So, we've got Hooters girls and cooks and managers throughout anywhere in the industries. We've had some in Congress, everywhere. We've had people, doctors, lawyers, things of that nature that people just don't always understand that, they look at Hooters as Hooters fun place to be, but it's a stepping stone. And if you talk to any, especially of the women that have worked for us, it's all about us empowering and giving them the confidence to do what they need to do. And that goes on the side of managers as well. So I'm just as happy when they go on and they're successful elsewhere because it started with us and they knew how to handle people and situations based on our training, our leadership, our experience.
I mean, there's so much in there that I'm like, whoa, okay. So like one of the things that you said 40% of in-store management comes from Hooters girls, okay? I mean, you must be far and away ahead of like industry sort of data on like women in leadership inside the restaurant itself. I mean,
I don't know. I don't look at that necessarily because I focus on our brand, but I would think that we're probably up there, especially internally promoted.
Yeah, I mean, just from what I'm hearing, it seems like it would be like I would be shocked if it wasn't that. You know what I mean? Like that's like it seems like you are doing a great job there.
And that extends to the regional manager ranks too. So, our regional managers make up, I think, 6% of what our total in-store population is. And of that, 10% of our regional managers are female and have come through the system as well. So we're starting to get that into the next levels and moving up. And then here in the office, again, we've got senior directors, vice presidents, both from the kitchen and from the Hooters Girls ranks that have been permeated into the corporate structure as well. So it's good to have that as our history and knowledge base, but then we supplement that too with experts from other brands to give another point of view because you have to have that. You have to have the opposing view for somebody that, sometimes things are so important, but only to us because we've been in the brand forever.
Yeah.
We need the view to make sure we're moving forward, not staying stagnant.
Totally. I always think of like the slayers of the sacred cows, like, and somebody come in and like point out something that would be considered a sacred cow. I think, COVID certainly slayed a lot of sacred cows anyway.
Sure.
But I think like now it's like, I totally get that in terms of like bringing in external viewpoints, but I think like the key thing that separates great brands from good is actually like having a proper program for career growth, not just a stepping stone into like college kid, doing college jobs, not just like a place for people to come in for like a summer job. It's not just a place. It's like you can actually progress in this company. And I think having you CEO, what was the woman's name you were saying?
Cheryl Kish, Chief People Officer.
Yeah, Sharkish, like starting, like, like, I mean, it's amazing the tenure. And like, I think that indicates a lot to the staff that are there, that like there is opportunity here in this growing business to actually make a career and forge a career. I think it's in particular important, like post-COVID, where there's just a greater onus. I think there's a greater focus on lots of like really great brands to like acknowledge, like really like the people are what make this kind of business, and like the cost of finding people and like to even bring into your business is so expensive that it's like, okay, like the ones we've got to really, really unlock here. And so when you talk about like training, like, what are sort of like, for in your mind, like what makes like great GMs in your mind?
Well, great GMs are ones that are engaged in the business, care about their people, and care about their customers. So, we have you said it, but it's career journey is what we call it. We have it
Yeah,
mapped out from every position all the way up.
that's
And
awesome.
you are right. Having people that have run the business, like we have credibility that, hey, I was you. And that's not only for our corporate stores, but for our franchise partners as well. When we deal with them, it's, hey, I understand we've run the business this way. It's not theoretical to us.
Yeah.
But for the folks in the restaurant, training's changed. It used to be you sat down and you had this thick book and you sat there and went through it and you read it and you did it all. And that's another thing we've adapted to. We have an excellent learning and development department. And, we do a lot of things. We still have to sit down and do on the job training, but we supplement that with video training, with e-learning systems, things that are getting today's employees. Everybody's used to the phone. They're used to doing something online. They're doing online school during COVID. So we tailor those. And then, the days of having big video shoots, the new iPhone can be used to do a whole full featured movie. So we do that to show real quick, like, hey, here's how we expect this new thing to be done. And, it's us. We're tongue in cheek. We're delightfully tacky yet unrefined was one of our original sayings.
I love, by the way, that was on the t-shirt, on my buddy's t-shirt. That
Yeah,
was, I
exactly.
couldn't remember. That was
That
the
was on the
t-shirt.
back.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so that's 40 years old, but that's what we are. So we still do things a little quirky sometimes, but we're nimble and it's a way to get it done without big expense, and it
Yeah.
probably resonates a little more than just you get your template on a thing and they're like, and today we are going to. Now you're seeing real girls doing it and explain, and that's what's important. If
Yeah.
a real girl explains the importance of why they do it to another, or to a cook, or to a manager, again, that resonates more than a talking head sitting up on a
Totally.
screen telling you why you should do this. It's always what's in it for them. And if it's in it for them and we take care of our employees, then that should cascade all the way through the business.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the message is also the medium, like
Mhm.
how you're communicating it. Because like you said, like you could have a thick book that's kind of like uncompelling to a Gen Z today. It's probably never read a book in their life. So it's like slightly different. I think about that a lot, even in what I do. I mean, like this podcast, for example, I could probably put 10, 15 grand a month into it if I really wanted to, know what I mean? And I'm like, but I'm able to have a great conversation here that the audio is going to be 99% of what 10 grand can get me. And the visual could probably be like 99% of what like that can get me. So like, I feel a lot of like, it's like, get it done. And like, it's like done is almost better than perfect. And it's like, how do you communicate like what that is? I mean, I very much drive that home into even my team. It's like, speak to execute, just get it done. We will always learn. We'll always get better. We'll adapt to like what we're trying to do, but not doing it and preparing it is just so much worse. You laugh at a video. We went to RLC last year, and I said to my teams, like, we got 2 days to make a video. I know this is a really ridiculous ask, but I kind of want to hold it off on asking you guys because I wanted to put us a bit under pressure for this. We basically filled this video with GIFs and memes and funny kind of like clips from clients of ours that like, I was like quotes, and I was like, this will just run in the background of our little booth. Because I was like, if somebody sees these Elmo GIFs or they see these kind of like stupid, like kind of memes that like, that kind of like show stop, and it did work because people love it. And I'm like, I'll tell you what, on LinkedIn, that thing does so well for us. I'm like, this thing, it's just actually hilarious. To your point, it's just really quirky. And I love that because I think like that actually, if you just, in a sea of sameness, you know what I mean? Like, in a sea of sameness, like we are surrounded by 10 other people who probably do something kind of similar to us. They don't do exactly what we do, but they probably do something kind of similar. And it's like everyone has the same blue color. They all have the same font. They all have some version of fuel your growth. and they all have like this random 10 things you need to know about hiring in 2024. Like everyone's producing all that. I'm like, no way are we doing any of that.
Right.
Like absolutely not. Like I said, give me the complete opposite of that. And that was actually the genesis of how we ended up starting doing the podcast. It was just
Awesome.
to eschew what everybody else is doing. And I'm like, everyone looks like they're doing the same. And now I'm speaking to you, Larry, here on a podcast 6 months later after like changing that strategy. So must be working.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm always like fascinated just about like, you know, leadership in general, because, you know, leaders are born, leaders are made. Like there's always that sort of like talking point, you know, and I think in hospitality in particular, it's super important because like you're on the ground. Like I think compared to like people like me in tech, where like I'm in a laptop and there's a divorcing of the screen between me and that other person, and like we don't even have an office to go to. You know what I mean? It's like we're like hybrid remote. So like, you know, the type of leadership that I have is just like very like, you know, very clear in its type of communication, which is also this incredibly different to like what it takes in sort of like a restaurant brand, because it's like you have to be on the ground in the person, not just what you say, but what you do also counts, and like how you present yourself, how you carry yourself. And so I guess, you know, for you, like, you know, when you say like you promote so many people internally and that's like a huge goal and you've got career paths for this, like what are the kind of elements, like the intangible elements? Because service can be taught. So you can teach people like P&L, you can teach people how to use a point of sale, you can teach people like the actual practicalities of the job. But what are the intangibles that you see from a Hooters perspective and HOA perspective, like that you look for in like sort of the great leaders in your company?
Yeah, you said it perfectly. It's about people and leading people and being able to adapt. So, early on in my career, I laughed at people now and I'm like, yeah, people either think I'm a jerk or a teddy bear if you talk to them from a long time ago. And I tell people they were probably both right because if you didn't do what you were supposed to, I was probably a little harder on some folks. And if you did what you're supposed to, you got what you needed. And, some of that, I had a brief military stint with the Marines and, I was used to, hey, you do this because that's your job. So early on, it was, hey, could you kind of sort of maybe do the job that I pay you to do? I had trouble saying that. It was,
Yeah.
I thought, I say you do. Once I realized that that didn't work and you had to look at each person and what their motivation is. So when you're at the store level, you do have a little bit of a tell and you can control a little better because of scheduling and this, and you're there every day. So they're used to what your expectations are as long as you're consistent and fair.
Yeah.
And that's what I found out, that the inconsistent leaders are the ones that don't get buy-in and don't have people and they have turnover. They might not always like what you say, but as long as you're consistent and fair and they know what to expect and it's in line with what we're supposed to do, then they're going to respect you. So, but then as you move up from, let's say, the store level to the above store level, too many people try to be a super GM and tell people, hey, you got to do it this way because it was successful for me.
Yeah.
And that's what I got away from really quick. And I say this, it's kind of silly, but I say, hey, if I say, what do you add together to get to 8? You might say 7 and 1. I say 4 and 4. Somebody else says 6 and 2.
Yeah.
It's still within the confounds of math, which I relate to the confounds of what our systems and procedures are. So if it works and you get there and you're not breaking any rules, then that's your way and it works for you. I'm not running that store every day.
Yeah.
My job is to see what you have as innate abilities and help enhance those, and then see what your opportunities are and help you get that. And then every time you move up a level from an RM to a director of operations, and your impact directly to the store gets less and less. So it's more about influence and how you've presented yourself and the respect you have for what you've done. And I am a big proponent of, I do the right thing for the right reason, regardless of who's looking, because that's that's what you have to do. Because if you're only doing it for the accolade or something else, or you're doing it not to get in trouble, it's not going to work. And your people see through that as well. So, and then you take it off. When I left the corporate side to the franchise side, they're business partners with their money invested, and that is more like where you can, I try not to tell, but you can tell on the corporate side. You have to sell on the other side. What's in it for them? Why is it important? And sure, we have, with our employees and our partners for franchisees, we have contracts and all that. Last thing I ever want to do, right? You don't want to say, well, it's written right here. I want to make sure that there's a win-win, because
let's not get to that point.
Because if not, what's a partnership about, right? It's just transactional. I want to make sure that, we're not always going to win. They're not always going to win, but we're going to be better as a company for what we do. And we're going to have some compromise. So, my leaders, I look for people that are genuine, do what they say, honest. If you make a mistake, make a mistake. As I've matured in the company, I've given up a lot of the direct micromanaging. I try not to do that at all. give them control and say, hey, as long as you don't get us sued, something big, anything like that. If you make a mistake, we'll talk about it. If as long as you have a logical decision behind it and I can follow it. If it was just, oh, I did it because, different story. So you've got to, again, it's about empowering the people to make those decisions. Because if not, you know what they'll always be doing? They'll always be waiting for you to make a decision for them, and they are not going to grow in that scenario.
Oh, totally. And I mean, I think that's like rules for life, as opposed to just rules for restaurants.
For sure.
You said something there. You've said this phrase a few times, like "what's in it for them," and I really like that sort of train of thought. Like, what's in it for them? You think about your partners, you think about the employees, and it's like that little phrase in and of itself. Like, you're kind of capturing like sort of the essence of what you're trying to do just by phrasing it that way. I mean, it sounds so simple, but I'm like hearing you say it a few times and I'm like across different things. And it's like, like as in you're trying to design win-wins, like you're trying to align the incentives for everybody. A win for the employee is a win for you. A win for the partner is a win for you. You know what I mean? And it's like getting those unlocks. There's just so much trust and communication. It sounds like, I mean, it's obvious, obviously, but I mean, in the sense that like, hearing you articulate it in such a way is like, just like speaks to like, the success of the brand almost. And I can totally understand why like so many of like the employees are like so positive about like working with you. And like, obviously 100% brand unaided recognition matters. Do you know, like, I mean, it's unbelievable. I'll never get over that stat. That's just like amazing. I never even thought about it.
We also encourage, and I do, and my boss does, we have what people say open door policy, but we encourage it. I want you to disagree with me if you think something respectfully, but if you think the idea is the dumbest thing ever, tell me and we'll talk about it and see why. And, again, I like to fail fast or fail forward. And we're not the only ones. We're in this role, and ultimately at some point we'll make a decision, but we get input from everybody in the organization. We regularly have meetings down to the store level asking folks what's going on. I instituted a regional manager and director of ops call without anybody else on it so that they felt comfortable. I even offered not to be on it. So if they wanted to not be here, but so they could really feel comfortable saying what they needed. So I could go to the departments here, because at the end of the day, we're here to support the people on the front lines, to support the guests. So we have our people will tell us how they feel about things, and without fear of any repercussion, because we want to know, because we don't have all the answers, right? Some of the best things come from our franchise partners, come from a new employee that says, hey, what do you think of this? Wow, didn't see it that way. Again, you said it earlier, sometimes you're so focused and you're in your zone of what you've done over the years that you didn't look at that other avenue. So we are always looking for ideas anywhere we can get them, and everybody can come to our office at any time and tell us an idea, what we're doing wrong, what we're doing right, what we'd like, what they'd like to continue with. So it truly is an open door policy here. That's how we continue to grow.
And that speaks to the culture of the company, that you enable people to have the confidence to come and say that from any level. It's like, what's that famous Samuel Beckett quote again? It's like, what is it? Try again, fail better. It's like, I mean, you're welcome to come. You're welcome to like pitch the idea. It's like, it's not going to ruin your job. You're not going to get fired. Right. Yeah. It's funny because that even is for me, even that is so alien. You know what I mean? Like, in the sense that like, it's so easy. Like for me, it's so easy. Like, you have an idea, document what your idea is, use some data to like back it up, do the experiment. Experiment doesn't work, no problem. Like, I speak to my team about that all the time. It's like, I don't mind whether the experiments work or they don't, but I do mind the lack of them. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, how do we do Monday? What are we scheduling for this week as a test? How do we launch it next week? Boom, rinse, repeat. And it's like, most will fail, but then the ones that win like are needle movers, and that's what we're trying to figure out.
And you have to, because if you don't, you know what? I'm a big proponent of, you have to be on offense, not defense.
Totally. I mean, man, like there's just, and I mean, you're in like probably as competitive an environment as I am. I mean, like every day there's a new fast casual that's launched, and then all of a sudden it's like 50 stores in like 12 months, and you're like, okay, all right, there's another competitor here again in the same neighborhood. It's funny. I think of like, I'm laughing because I have a guy coming on, and the guy was saying earlier, a real estate guy in Miami, and he was like, how many more concepts can we put into Brickell in that little area there? He's like, they're just all like just devouring themselves. It's like, it's an interesting time. But here, one of the kind of innovations, that like I was thinking about, and things that you're doing is, you talk about like ideas, like your Super Bowl, for example. like, and how you like deal with the operations there. Because I mean, even I had a Super Bowl party this year, and there was like 20 something people there, and I bought a bunch of pizzas, and I was like, oh my god, I actually now have to put these in the oven, and how am I going to turn these out for people? So I can only imagine what it's like in somewhere like Hooters. But also, like, you have probably presumably had to design a very particular type of operation for that. I presume like the week, the run up to prepare for it, and then the actual day itself, and then the aftermath. So, like, do you want to walk me through that? Like, what is the special practice that you guys have there? Special teams, so to speak.
Yeah, so that's the busiest day of our year, Super Bowl, and with 40 years of experience, we learn every year. But we actually have a, playbook that we have together that our director of ops service here runs a call probably a couple months prior with all the regional managers, and we're down to every store is a little different, which I think we'll get into that a little later. But so we actually have it down to how many, the capacity of the fryers, the recovery, how many wings per hour can we have in. We have history from our POS system of the previous years. Now the online has changed that a little bit because we used to only have call-ins, and you'd say, okay, this spot you want to have it at 2 to 2:30, we can have it at 2:45 because we don't have the capacity. We do supplement that a little bit with hot boxes. It's not in there for that long, but it's just enough time to get the fryers back and more into the fryers. It's not putting them in early in the day and leaving them there all day. They're still super hot and fresh. But each store has different capacity, so we know that ahead of time. So they know how many they can take. We take pre-orders. We take orders during the day. Everybody wants them the same time, 3 to 6 before the game starts. And then we have we take sections of the restaurant because one section toward the back, and we'll have everything lined up. We'll have the staff there. We'll have names on everything so people can quickly come in, grab, and go out the door. And again, one of the, I wouldn't say easy, but we have it down because we've done it so many years, and each year it's evolved. And again, this year was a little easier with the to-go because we've had 4 years to learn how to manage it. Some stores so busy that they might turn the to-go off because again, they want to make sure they can take care of all the customers they can come in the door. So, and then some other big events we have, like I'll say the Daytona 500. I ran that store for a little while, so I had my experience. But those days, there's so many people coming in and we have so much staff on, and it's so fun. There's no time for idle time. And it's actually probably some of the quickest food you're going to get because we're cooking nonstop then. And people come in and they're having it. Even then, we do stadium seating because it's so busy. Like if you and your mate come in and you have two and there's a table for four in line, we'll say, hey, you two, you want to get in? You just met here. And you'd be amazed the communal aspect, especially down there in the NASCAR community, that there are people that come in year after year that met because they were seated at a table together to get in the door. Right. So that is another big event that we just had right now. Bike Week's going on in Daytona. So those are big events that we manage, and we have them all around the country whenever stuff comes in. And again, some of those, as long as you prepare properly on the front end, are the easiest days to run because you're properly staffed, the volume, what's coming in. And it's just fun, excitement, energy because everybody's, in there for whatever the event is.
When I think of an event like that, so like like say how many drinks orders, how many food orders that you can expect. Do you have that down to the like say and you bring that back and say like think of it like a funnel? So if we like that many drinks orders, we need that many bar staff, if we need that many, and you're like able to map out, so you're able to almost like play the accordion with the amount of people that you need, breathe in and breathe out, like almost like incredibly flexible. Like I mean, the incentive is so strong for the staff because presumably that's like the tips would just
like, people are happy.
They're happy to be there in the first place, so that they'll bust their ass for that day.
And volume cures all ill. So if you have high volume, obviously there's more staff you can have on that you need to have on for that. Really where most brands struggle is if they happen to have low volume stores, then you have to watch every little penny that goes out the door. So, volume cures all ills, and it makes it, for us, we have to have people on because we are an experience. People come in to have an experience and have that entertainment and watch the sports and get, have a little talk at the table and then, have great wings and cold beer.
And you know what? You should definitely make an ad about the stadium seating, by the way. Find people who've actually become friends from like the Daytona experience and make some social media content on that, like make an ad, because I'm like, that's the stuff that in my mind that resonates. It's like, we've been friends for 40 years. I met him sitting here. I didn't like him at first. He was quiet.
I just had a picture last week from our director of ops down there of a group that comes in that had special shirts made up that every year they come for the race and they wear those shirts. I think they're called the Hooters Tutors or something like that. And they come in and they do it. I have people I haven't been in Daytona since 2001. And there's still people that come in and are like, hey, tell Larry we said hi at the office, right? Because you're out on the floor greeting them, and it's just
Yeah.
such a great environment when those things happen.
I mean, I love the advocacy so much. Like that's, like that's like the dream. Like you want people to come in and wear Hooters tutors. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
want people, and it's a nostalgia thing. You know what I mean? Like people have a great time. Yeah, I'm sure you have all the data and all the loyalty and all that kind of stuff. Where it's like people come once, people come 3 times, people come 10 times, and knowing like what it is about them that comes. But like Hooters to me, like almost has like a Disneyland kind of vibe in terms of like you went, like you bring your kids, your parents brought you when they were kids, or when they brought you when you were a kid, it's almost like a like transgenerational sort of experience to
Sure.
it now, like that, like people remember. Like the last time I was in a Hooters in 2008, and I remember it so well, and it was actually in Toronto. And I'm like, I know, like you talked about the wood paneling earlier. I was like, that's exactly the memory I had
Well,
of
we
it.
got to get you back in. That's been a little while.
It has been a while. It has been. I mean, you don't have one. Are there any? I mean, are there in Europe? I mean, like,
Oh yeah. We've got we've got Interlaken, we've got
Interlaken.
Hamburg,
I mean,
we've got Interlaken. Okay, so let's say closer to you coming up. So we've got Nottingham's been in the UK for 20
Yeah.
plus years. We have Liverpool that opened last year, and then fresh off the presses, we are in. I believe we just signed Newcastle, which is going to be in the big market, which is going to be a big
Yeah, it's gonna be a big one.
coming this year. So I'll get you an invitation to Newcastle opening, and we'll get
Wow.
over there. And that's a quick hop from Dublin. Come on.
That is a quick hop, I mean, less so from New York City, but what I will say is my brother is the biggest Newcastle United fan ever. So I think we'll make a
Well,
weekend.
in New York City, what, you're 5 hours to Dublin, you're another hour over to there. Come on.
Yeah,
I'm down in Atlanta. I'll come up. We'll go over.
We'll do that. This is a great courtesy. Quid pro quo for the podcast,
Yeah, not even for the podcast. No quid pro quo. I just want you to come. 16 years has been too long, man. You got to get.
Yeah, exactly. God, that's a long time actually. Now that I think about it, I was less gray and I was more hair here.
Same.
But here, tell me, you mentioned a lot about like sort of the franchising, and we talk about like the models of like sort of like the different kind of corporate franchise. Kind of alluded to them, and then obviously like you mentioned offline, like it's a real estate play as well. So like I'm curious, when you think about like flexible store models, how does that impact like the growth and how you think about like the future of what like HOA can do?
Yeah, so I think right now is an interesting time because unfortunately with COVID, a lot of folks, and especially younger mom and pop folks, didn't make it. So there's a lot of second generation real estate out there. And the good thing about us is you don't have to have a X square foot building with X square acre pad to get in to build this box that looks the same everywhere. We are from the beginning, we were opportunistic, 40 years ago. And again, like I said, you could put us anywhere and we took spaces and people came to them. Now that's evolved a little bit as we've had competition and people put in bigger boxes, TVs, things of that. And we do have a prototype that is right there. You can put on your acreage and you have it. And it's all the newest stuff. But part of the history of Hooters, as you said, the wood wall, some things, we still have some originals like that we just bring in elements of the newer, because people are really like, hey, this is my Hooters. I don't want to change it too much, but we can go in almost anywhere. So we go in end caps, we go in the middle. I mean, we've had some unique stores, but most of our unique stores are outside of the US because of the constraints to size, or some of them have to build up. For an example, one of our more unique is the third store in Taipei. They're in when they pitched it to me, I thought it was crazy, right? Because I'm thinking American, I'm thinking US. It's a Far Eastern department store. It's 14 or 15 stories, and they were going to be on the top of it. And I'm thinking, who's going to the 15th floor, right? But you go through the whole department, then there's the movie theater, and then there's restaurants on the top. And we have a patio that overlooks Taipei 101. I mean, spectacular stuff. Yeah. Probably never work here in the States, does wonderful there, right? We mentioned Interlaken. It's a little chalet that's in the mountains, beautiful. And that partner, when I first met with him, he's like, I guess people before me wanted him to make it into like the Hooters. And I'm like, well, you can add some elements, but this is what fits in this market, right? This is a little Swiss chalet. It's beautiful. Cozumel's right off the pier when the boat's docking. It's almost all outside. So is La Isla in Cancun. It's a thatch hut outside overlooking the bayside. So we've got a lot of interesting stores that have gone into places where we couldn't otherwise go if we wanted cookie cutter boxes. So if you
I was going to say that must be super, compelling two potential franchises, people who want to like open up a Hooters, because I guess like you could compare it to like some of your competitors where they are very specific
Mhm.
about how the look and feel of every store should be. But I mean, the Interlaken is such a great example, because I mean, I'll tell you what, like that is not a place that I expected to have a conversation about today, and B, like knowing that there was like a Hooters in it. But I think it captures the essence of what you're saying, which is like, you can open one and you don't have to make it the exactly like the wood panel that is traditional. It's like make it work within your market, like I pay, like, I mean, 15th floor. I mean, exactly. It's like a
And
lot
that's
of money.
something we try to we also want to get into what the local, especially internationally, right, being on
Yeah.
5 continents, what the brand is. If you look down in Mexico, Mexico City, I mentioned a couple on the Yucatan Peninsula, our biggest franchisees in Hooters de Mexico. And down there, unlike here in the States, malls are big, so they have spaces in malls where
Yeah.
they do it right, and then they have some separate areas for a kids zone, and families are in one section, and there's either Nintendo's on the wall, or there's TVs, things of that nature. And then they have one where it's in a mall where on the top of the mall there's like a roller coaster and stuff. Here in the States, believe it or not, we have one in Newport, Kentucky that's on a barge. Like it's an actual barge against right across from the Red Stadium. We have
Yeah.
a ferry that goes back and forth, but it's floating on the Ohio River. San Jose, which is in Jacksonville, Florida, has docks that people pull their boats up to and can hook their boats up, walk up, and have something to eat and come in. So the good news is that with all the second, easy for me to say, second generation space,
Yeah.
we can adapt. Our team here of development, we get them every day, and they're like, hey, how can you fit this into 3,000 square feet and still and it's more about the experience, right?
Yeah.
We can put the elements, as you said, into a new box, and then it's the experience in the store. So does it matter if it's a 5,000 square foot high? You have the TVs for the sports related. You have the atmosphere of the Hooters girls, and you have our unique Hooters service. That's really what Hooters is about. So, and sometimes the smaller ones feel a little more comfy, right? You got more people in there than having the gigantic ones that might be empty at times because there's nothing in town. So we run the gamut from, I think the smallest is probably a couple thousand square feet up to a 10,000 square feet. We
Yeah.
agent
I know.
in Vegas. We have one attached into the Oyo Casino. Used to be the Hooters Casino. Oyo bought it, but it's still back at the
Yeah.
casino. It's unique. So we can adapt to almost anywhere that people want us to go. And the only caveat is that it has to be big enough to give the Hooters experience still with our menu.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I guess then, that leads into like sort of like, what does 2024 look like? You mentioned like, some of the second generation stores, like there's a turnover in those. And then like obviously you presumably have like growth plans for more stores. So like how's like 2024 lining up for you?
Yeah, so we're going to be opportunistic in 2024. With a brand that's 40 years old, we have some things that we need to do with some of our own stores. But we opened a second store in El Paso. We had a store in El Paso for 20 years, which did very well. So we opened a second store on the other side of town there. And then we're going to, you mentioned Corpus Christi. We're going to be reopening Corpus Christi. It had a fire a couple of years ago, and that'll be open in mid-May for us. And then after that, we're looking at opportunistic growth in those second gen spaces in where we already are that we might have a hole in the market. So, after 40 years, 30 years, some of our franchise partners, same thing. Markets move, which was the hot market at one point, you're in the right spot. 20
Yeah.
years later, your lease is up, your franchise agreement's up, and okay, we need to move that somewhere else. One of our larger franchisees here, 20 years in the States, just re signed their 8 store deal for another 20 years because they're in the right markets and they like it. And then we have growth, bigger growth probably in that we have a couple other that'll be opening here in the States from our franchise partners. And then really we're looking at growth internationally. So as I mentioned, we have another one opening in the UK. We have brokers all around the world looking for a lot of excitement bringing in for us, but we've got to have the right fit. So a lot of people have money and many people want to be the Hooters person, but
Yeah.
we want to make sure that they have the right attitude, the right aptitude, because it's not just, hey, I'm not in it just to get a transaction. I'm in it for them to be part of our family because, with all of our stores around the world, we're responsible to make sure we bring the right people into the family so they don't do something to damage the brand otherwise. So
Totally.
the quick buck's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the long-term operators that are set to do it right. And then, as I mentioned, our largest franchise, Hooters de Mexico, they'll open another 4 stores this year. I think they have one open in April, and they just keep clicking along and great partners of ours down there. that get it done. And if you really want to see the familial part of it, not only is that for that culture, but you'll go
Yeah.
in and just like in America you will, but there even more so. You'll see families, you'll see just women with business meetings, you'll see the guys at the bar watching the football as the not
Good.
American football,
Good.
and they'll see that down there. So really, we'll continue to expand. And again, we're open for business. And as COVID, pandemic, inflationary things start to shake out,
Yeah.
people are getting they're people ready to reinvest their money, and we're a great place for that.
Okay, awesome. Well, we have really run the gamut here. I hope your mouth isn't exhausted, Larry, from all the talking, because I've really given you the platform.
Yeah, man, this is a light day for me. Everybody else will tell you that.
Oh, great. Well, I'm glad that this is. I'm glad that this is respite. I will ask you one challenging question before we go. And I say challenging because it's annoyingly vague, and I feel like it catches everybody. So, prepare yourself, sir. Which is, what advice would you give people listening to this podcast?
That's not even that challenging. So thank you.
Good.
Yeah, but I've already said it before. But be true to yourself, know where you're going, and always be open and honest with the people you deal with. And for me, it's about wins. And I didn't know that early on in my career. And I think maybe in our pre-interview we talked a little bit that everybody can grow, and I continue to grow. And I'm not the same person I was 4 years ago, 20 years ago. And again, the things we did in our 20s we certainly didn't think about doing in our 30s. And now that I just turned 55, I'm definitely not doing some of those. I wouldn't wake up the next day probably.
Yeah.
But what I learned was that the more I can help others be successful within and give them wins, I don't need the accolades. I have enough credibility. I don't need anything. I used to try to prove that, hey, I was the guy and I could do this, and I did. Now I help support from the side or behind and use my platform to help them grow. So if there's something, I'm happy to throw something out and somebody think I'm an idiot because it didn't work, but I'll bring it out and then let the experts talk about it. So I try to make wins for others, because then when you do that, you have more credibility. And you know what? High tides float all boats, right? If all the people I work with and my peers are successful, then I'm going to be successful. And they say it, and not a lot of people do it. I like to hire people that have skill sets that I don't have and are better than me, and then let them do their jobs and run with it. And that makes them better. That makes the brand better. That makes me better. So stay true to yourself. Make sure that you're doing the right things for the right reasons, not just because somebody's looking. And you're not always going to get the recognition right away. But I've never asked for a position in this company, but they've always come and been offered to me. And I continue to grow today and look at my peers, look at people that work with me, and take a little bit from each of them every day. And that's what I would leave everybody else with. Be honest, sincere, and open.
Larry, you're an absolute legend. This has been a phenomenal interview and a phenomenal conversation and a phenomenal episode. I'm kind of bowled over by how exceptional it's been. So I want to thank you for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, just make sure everybody that's watching this, you get onto your Hooters app, you get into your loyalty, you get all our stuff, you come into our stores, experience what we have. All sports are on. Newest thing, MLS in every store. As much other European football as possible as we can and see it, and then all the things you're used to from the United States as well. So we like to support all countries and all sports.